Hi, my name is Diana Bogan, and I am with the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. I am also the designer and recent editor for the Ashford Chronicle, and today I am here with Nathan Fritz and James Metz. They are full-time faculty in our Comm Arts Department of the Division of General Education and have recently done a pretty amazing revision to English 225, and I've invited them here today to talk about all the work they've done. So the first question I wanted to ask you was, what were kind of your driving factors, your main driving factors for doing this revision?
James and I both teach this class an awful lot. We've been teaching it for years. We're both very familiar with the class. And I think one of our driving factors, one of the things we thought about a lot as we began to approach the revision was that we really wanted to rethink what we were doing. We didn't want to just tweak and move furniture around. We wanted to really re-envision how the class could be developed. And that sort of gave us a really big slate of things that we could consider. We could look at the curriculum, the content itself in the class, but we could also think about the delivery. How do we want the students to engage with the material? And it was really a lot of fun to sort of realize that I think in our conversations again and again, one of the things that came up was that we wanted all of the learning experiences in the class, all the opportunities for students to engage with the material, we wanted them to be meaningful. And I feel like everyone says that, but when we looked at the older version of English 225, we saw a lot of points being apportioned to the quizzes. We saw many weeks where there were multiple discussion boards and written assignments. And as a result, students were engaging with course content at a fairly shallow level throughout the class. It felt to me as if not only the students, but the teachers were being handcuffed, sort of dipping into a variety of different little pools instead of really digging into what we thought were the main focuses of the class, the most important theories and sort of elements we wanted to highlight. So I think, when you ask about driving forces, I think part of what we kept thinking about was we wanted to make it meaningful. We wanted to put the focus and the points and the opportunities, make them more robust, make the learning a little bit more rigorous, and really give everybody a chance to dig in a little more deeply than they might have been able to in the past.
And the real driving force behind this revision is the new edition of the textbook for the class, which Nate and I both worked on together and revised the previous edition written by two outside authors. And part of our issue with the textbook as it was that it wasn't always directed toward our students and toward those theories that Nate just mentioned that we really wanted to drive home and wanted students to delve more deeply into. And it also didn't really apply to students' lives outside of this course. And that's one of the big pain points that we've seen in our years of teaching this class. It's a fun class. Students get to watch film, think about it, think about why they love film, and then have a more meaningful foundation from which to understand why they love films and what they love about them. But it's not just fun, it's teaching them skills, analysis, writing, thinking in more complex ways about the way in which film or any subject really is constructed, and being able to break that thing down into its constituent parts so to better understand it.
I think finding a way to contextualize the learning in the class, like James is talking about, the textbook gave us one vehicle for doing that, and the design of the class gave us another vehicle for doing that. And it helps students to find this course content, which is film, and orient it in their overall arc of their educational career, but also their prospective career. So they can see how this class fits into what has come before and what's going to come next. to understand the knowledge that we're giving them about film, but also to better understand the skills that are the underpinning of that, that will, again, influence their next classes, their career, whatever comes next for them. I feel like, that we had that opportunity with the textbook revision and the course revision to have those things align. It's not so much that one drives the other, but obviously with our voices, along with a lot of help along the way, our voices shaping those experiences, I think really made it a more streamlined experience. I think it's going to be a fun class to take. I think it's going to be a fun class to teach. But I think along with that fun, as James points out, I think people will be more aware of how what they're learning really applies to a broader spectrum.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you're working in that application for students, not just in this class, but in their lives and in their future classes, because we all know that that is a pain point for students. Why do I need to take this class? And it applies to so many classes. So I'm very excited that that was something that you were able to address.
I think students especially are going to look at our week 5 has been redeveloped to really put a focus on how this knowledge impacts their career field. We were really lucky to be able to work with Nicole Poff in Career Services, who helped us develop a prompt in week 5 that will help students to really draw out some of the knowledge from the class, but to almost itemize that, bullet it, resume or LinkedIn style, to figure out, to really put a point on what it is they've learned, and to, see for themselves, and to then share that with their peers in class. I think it's going to make for a really nice sort of culmination at the end of the class. That's one of the things we worked really hard on, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I think that's great. So my next question would be, were you able to kind of incorporate your associate faculty into your process of your revision?
We really were. And Nate and I hosted a number of webinars with our associate faculty to, one, get their insight into what they liked about the class, what things they would change, what were pain points for them as instructors, what were pain points for students that they had taught, and really incorporate that feedback into our design, and give our associate faculty a sense of buy-in. They're really involved in this process and feel a part of the class, I think, which is really necessary for our associate faculty, who often feel a little out in left field because they're remote. Well, we're all remote. But to really give them that sense of participation in the curriculum. And it was really, really generative, I think, for our approach to the design of the course, to the material that we excised and added. Nate?
Yeah, I think, it's difficult. Ashford's a big school. We run a lot of class sections. And I think our teachers, even James and I, to a certain extent, we walk into a classroom and we're following someone else's dance steps. They're not telling us how to teach, but they're telling us what to teach. And that can be really difficult to deal with. And so it was important to us. I mean, James and I started thinking about the content in this new version of the class in August of 2018. I'm talking to you now in March of 2019. So we had been thinking about it for a really long time. And very early in our discussions, we were like, we need to find out what other people think about this. And so not only did we reach out to other full-timers within the Division of General Education who had other expertise that could help us, but it was really natural to turn to our associate faculty pool. In English 225, we have a pretty small, I want to say small, it's not small, there's 50 or 60 adjuncts that are committed, dedicated to English 225, but I guess when I say small, really what I mean is that James and I have almost weekly contact with most of the people in that associate faculty pool. They're outspoken, they're intelligent, they're very friendly, and it's fun to have conversations with them and bat ideas around. And I think bringing them in and having them involved in the revision was a real natural extension of that. I mean, I'm having an email conversation even today with an associate faculty member who's just thinking about how to grade one of the papers in the class, and we're just kind of bouncing ideas off. How much do we really put emphasis on this point, and what do we think about this topic? And so having those conversations about the course content, you know, I think put James and I both in the frame of mind where these are the experts. I mean, we're the subject matter experts. We're the full-timers in the trenches every day at Ashford, but we don't teach every section of the class. There are lots of people who do, and we wanted to tap into that the way James just described. You know, we wanted to bring them in. We ran these sort of town hall webinars. We got a lot of response to those. We got a lot of email responses, and it was generative. I mean, I think there were times that James and I would bring something to those meetings. We would say, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking. What do you guys, you know, how are you hearing this? And they would throw it back at us, and we would develop and build something that we hadn't necessarily thought about going into it. And there were other times where, you know, we would have to, through explaining it, kind of bring people around to our point of view. So it was a really nice give and take. I don't think that, I think it'd be difficult for James and I to sit here and look at the new version of the class and point to anything that we 100% did ourselves in a vacuum, right? Because James and I were talking on a daily basis. We had the associate faculty involved. I mentioned Nicole Poff was brought in. We'd worked really closely with people at the Ashford Writing Center, at the library. And then just our own experiences bringing in other full-time faculty too. So it was really a collaborative effort. I mean, and obviously our instructional designer had a lot to say too with how we brought the class about. But the associate faculty, I think, really added a crucial voice to how we conceived of the class, and made us realize that we're designing this learning experience for the students. We also have teachers who need to be able to put their stamp on it and need to be able to navigate this. And so we really were able to, I think, address this from a teaching and learning perspective as we worked on the revision, because of the associate faculty being as involved as they were.
Right, and we have associate faculty, I think, who have been teaching this course as long as we have, if not maybe longer. And the course has seen various iterations over the years. Was it just 2 years ago or 3 years ago that we revised it?
Mm-hmm.
And now we've really done a deep cleaning and a deep reimagining of this course. And I think the feedback that we get from our associate faculty, really, and from you, Diana, from everyone who's seen it, that the work we've done with those other voices is really paying off. And we hope that students who are just 2 days ago starting this new course will find the same thing.
I think it's just so great that you were able to really incorporate your associate faculty in that way. I know that our team has been really dedicated in the last year, and definitely forward in this year, to try to create more of a community for our associate faculty in particular. You know, we've done a lot of faculty meetups and just trying to break that barrier from being an online educator that's in a bubble, and try to make them feel more a part of a process. You know, we do have standardized curriculum for our courses. So a lot of instructors do have that feeling of, you know, not being able to have any kind of touch on the content. So I think that you guys did a really great job of bringing them in so that they felt like they were a part of the process, because they're going to be teaching this course, and, you know, they got a hand in it. So kudos to you guys for remembering that our associate faculty are important in this process. I really appreciate that.
I mean, and that's why we thought it was important. I mean, once the class was built, going back maybe 3 weeks now, James and I brought it back to the associate faculty. We ran a series of webinars for our associate faculty where we toured through the class. We pointed out all the different elements of the class that we were excited about, all the elements that might have changed, all the elements that would impact them in their teaching. So again, we don't want anyone to show up to class day one, either feeling like they don't want to be there or don't know what to do. I mean, we wanted them to be as involved in the entire process as they themselves wanted to be. And yeah, we've had great turnout to these webinars. And it's a testament, I think, to the culture, at least in our pool of associate faculty. I can't really speak much more broadly than that, but they're pretty engaged, both with us, talking with us, and with the class itself. So it's been a joy.
That's awesome. So my last question kind of is just, what kind of changes did you make that you are just most excited about for students to experience, for your faculty to experience?
Well, one of the things that we did was, and Nate mentioned this up front, was create a better balance in the workload across the 5 weeks of the course. In weeks where there are papers due, we have removed one of the 2 discussion boards, so there's just one discussion, but it's a much deeper, more engaging discussion, so that students will really drill down into those concepts that coincide with the papers that they're writing at the time. So they're really, the discussions are supporting the papers in a way that they weren't always doing before, and at least giving the appearance of less work each week, even though that work is deeper, more meaningful, and more grounded in the structure of the course.
It's a bit of a magic trick. I mean, I hope that one of the things we're most excited about, like James was just talking about, this new flow of the class, how the assignments really emphasize and develop from each other, allowing students to focus on the things that are most important. I certainly hope that nobody notices that, because it's supposed to be part of the invisible design of the class. The student gets in and suddenly they're writing their week 1, day 1 introduction post, and they're already talking about how film and society interact with each other, which is the grounding for all the theories that the students are going to learn in the class. They're not going to know that. They're not going to say, oh, this was super fun, or, ooh, I've really just learned formalist theory, and that's helped me to understand how auteur theory, and no, they're not going to know any of that yet. They'll learn it as the class goes on. So those elements where the discussion boards have been honed and focused to allow for deeper treatment of ideas that are going to really move into the way the written assignments are developed, students hopefully won't see that. But that's one of the things I think is really, really exciting here in the class. And I think I'm also really pumped about all of the student support services we've been able to build into the class. I think that for a few years, my sense of this class was English 225 is a 200 level class. That means it's harder than 100 level classes. That means our students are more prepared. And I kind of had this perspective of myself as a teacher as sort of pushing students along, but without necessarily pausing to give out the helping hand. And I feel like that was kind of wrong-headed of me. I mean, I had this idea of myself as Dr. Pritz, who was, being sort of tough love throughout the class. And I feel like there are times in the old version of the class when some of the elements that we thought were really important weren't coming through to students because the support wasn't there to highlight those elements. I'm thinking about how the week 2 and week 3 written assignments can be pushed together to help develop the week 5 paper. It was always our intent to help students see how the iterative process of writing built to a finished product, but we didn't make that clear, not as clear as we could anyway. And so now, I mean, in addition to having career services work with us in the week 5 prompt, the Ashford Writing Center came in and developed a unique outline. There's no written assignment in week 4, but there is an outline assignment that builds to the week 5 written assignment. So we've spelled out in the class how to develop your week 5 paper using this outline that the AWC built for us. It's right there in the classroom now. So those types of tweaks, those types of additions, I think are going to have students moving through the class in a way where the support is visible. Maybe the design of the of the content is a little bit invisible, but the support will be a lot more visible. And I think that's really important for this new version of the class.
Right, and the scaffolding of the assignments is a lot more visible. So students are very clearly able to visualize how their introduction on the first day of the first week builds into what they do each week throughout the class, and then circles around in week 5 to revisiting that on a much deeper scale, using all the knowledge they've acquired over the course.
One other thing I would add, which has been something I hadn't really expected, and James and I haven't really talked about this yet, but we're professors of film. We teach the film class, but through this process, we've had to talk to the library, the writing center, career services. Diana, we've talked to you and the FSDA team. We've talked to the student services managers and the advising team managers, and everybody we talk with, the associate faculty, everybody we talk with has a slightly different perspective on this class, by which I mean they think something different when they look at it, but they also have different needs or wants from the class. And so getting to talk through that over the last 6 or 8 months and as we build to the launch, which just happened this week, I think has given us a really interesting perspective on it, which is going to impact our teaching, but definitely impacted the design too. I mean, we know what students need when they walk into class on day 1, because we've talked to advisors who have heard those horror stories from students who show up to class not knowing what to do or feeling overwhelmed. But we also know where the pain points are for teachers in week 3 when they've got 2 papers to grade, because we talked to Diana, you and your team in the FSDA. So all of that information, we were able to filter that through and really think about a class that, I mean, heck, you're not going to please everybody all the time, but at least being aware of those sometimes competing, sometimes not competing ideas or drives really helped us to build a better class.
Well, I think you guys have done an excellent job. So I appreciate you guys coming today, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.